All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the August version of the MSMF Wealth Management Client Podcast. My name is Mark Finke. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Cody Redding, and my friend and colleague, Jay Peters. How are you guys?
What's up?
Doing great.
Did you guys notice that I have my red, white, and blue on? It started out as a soon-to-be fall crisp day, a little hint of what's coming. So I thought, hey, given the season, did you get the memo? There's an election this year. Did you know that?
I try not to.
There is an election this year. So, and we are, we're in a President's Cup year, Christopher, and we're 7 days away from Mizzou football. Brady Cook, fine graduate of Chaminade College Preparatory High School. And did you know that Matthew Tkachuk and Jason Tatum are champions of the NHL and NBA, respectively? Did you know where they went to high school? Chaminade College Preparatory High School.
Somebody's proud.
God bless America. Anyway, you don't want to hear me sing. All right, so it is an election year. Let's get into that a little bit. And I think a year ago, if I would have told you that we already had an assassination attempt, that one candidate was replaced with another without ever receiving a vote, and all the other craziness, you would look at me and say, you are an absolute buffoon. That would never happen. Well, in fact, it has happened, okay? And probably a crazier general election season than we've seen in the past, although they have ramped up the last probably 16 years. And we get a lot of questions from clients with this craziness. It's easy to get emotional and concerned. What should we be doing with our investment portfolio? Our investment strategies, our overall financial blueprint. And I'd like to take some time to talk about that today and maybe lower the temperature a little bit on what we would expect and historically what we've seen along those lines. Okay? I will say our good friends at American Funds have for many years put out Guide to Investing in Election Year. And we've all read it, studied it for the better part of 20 years, and it really gives us a very good guide relative to speaking to these issues. So we use that kind of as our benchmark today in terms of the issues that are raised within that kind of brochure. And certainly that's available to send to our clients if they want it after they hear the podcast. And what I'll say to keep my friends in compliance happy, as always, past performance does not equate to future results. But we can look at some historical trends and what's going on and maybe, not necessarily draw exact conclusions, but they can kind of hint at what could potentially happen. Fair enough? Mm-hmm. All right, let's dive right into it. All right. Cody, let's just start with, there's got to be an answer to this. Which political party historically is better for investors when we look at election years?
Yeah, that's a number one question we always get. It's such an emotional thing for everybody that if you're on one side or the other, you certainly think, your side's going to be the best side when it comes to the market, and the other side's going to be bad, right? So, we actually look through the data and what the American Funds report, and there's all sorts of reports out there that also justify the same thing, that it doesn't matter which side of the political party you're on, they come out to be about the same. I think the biggest difference that you can actually see in return, or the time that the market is the best, let's say, is when you have split house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican that's in the White House. It's what happens with Congress and representatives.
So historically, if one party controls everything.
Yeah, on either side, Democrat or Republican, usually don't have as good as years as if they're split, which is kind of funny.
Because they're like drunk with power and can't agree to anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, kind of a non-starter then, regardless of which political party, who's the loudest, who wins, doesn't really play into long-term results and investment strategy.
Right.
Okay, super. Jay, this is one we get all the time. What typically happens to the stock market during an election year?
Yeah, and this is super important because when we're talking about how should I be invested, what is my plan, right? Should I be making adjustments because of this? This thing we want to share for American Funds really shows that you really shouldn't make any big changes because during the year, election years tend to be a little bit different than non-election years. At the beginning of the year, during the primaries, we're trying to feel out who's going to be running those sorts of things. You'll see that a lot of times there's more volatility, so more ups, more downs. Every time someone says something, a part of the market might get hot or cool off or something. That kind of makes sense if you think about it. But then after the primaries, after we kind of know who's running, we know, which topics are going to be really deciding the different elections and everything. That's when it really kind of stabilizes. And if you look at the end of the year, 12 months after that, the gap is very, very small. It doesn't really matter election year versus non-election year. What ends up happening is you would just get a little bit more ups and downs, and then it stabilizes during the year.
Got it. Okay, so from the 10,000-foot view, election year, non-election year,
You kind of end up at the same. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We all end up in the same spot. All right, Cody, let's get a little more granular. Let's talk about which sectors of the economy might benefit more before or after an election year.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So we're able to go back about 30 years and see if we could see if there was any sort of pattern that kind of emerges. I think it also depends on what the platforms are running on and what's important for the agenda. But there certainly seems to be a trend to where maybe after the election you might see a bump up in energy and financials. But it's a pretty wide spread there.
Right.
So certainly not not set in stone that's going to happen, right? And before the election, there really is no sort of like sector or pattern that we see that usually performs better leading up to that. So yeah, energy's financials after, and that's kind of really the only pattern that we do see.
Yeah, and I would say historically those are almost always policies du jour.
Yep.
And then depending on the election year, kind of what Jay's saying, there's other things that come up that may impact short-term movements, but what you're saying is long-term movements, it's a non-starter.
Exactly.
Well said, Mark. Okay, Jay, let's now get into the psychology, the behavioral finance aspect of this. What mistakes historically do we see investors make during election years, before, during, or after even?
The biggest mistake is really investors trying to time the market. So we've already talked about there's been some volatilities. Some sectors maybe do better or worse during different policy heads. But the biggest mistake investors make is they try and time it by moving money out of the market and put it into cash. And so this time of year, it gets really, really uncertain. And a lot of people makes them nervous hearing what people are saying. And so they start moving money to cash, money market accounts, those sorts of things. And then at the end of the election, they try and jump back in and try and catch the wave after the market's kind of taken off without them.
Right.
And so, and we see it in the 4-year cycle, not every single time, but almost every election, that seems to be what happens. People get nervous, they pull out of the market goes up, they get back in, and then they've already missed it go up.
Right.
So that's why, kind of re-emphasizing stay invested.
Right.
It's not trying to time the market, it's time in the market. We've said that 100 times.
Yep.
Well said. Yeah, and again, have recently gotten all three of these questions. Trump's an idiot. Should I go to cash? Biden's an idiot. Should I go to cash? Now it's Harris is an idiot. Should I go to cash?
Right.
One man's opinion, they're all idiots. Okay. But what the data, Jay, you did a good job referencing, is going to cash just because there's psychological, emotional uncertainty, or even, to be fair, political uncertainty, historically has been a bad idea. Because we're talking about a short period of time, we're not talking about someone's investment life cycle.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Cody, given what Jay said, what are the best ways to invest or things to do during an election year?
Yeah, I mean, kind of really what he's really said is stay the course. You have a strategy put in place. Don't change it because of a short-term emotional need. And other data certainly supports for everyone that has like the 401k, stay the course, dollar cost average, because you will get volatility. And if you're dollar cost averaging, you're able to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. So Let's go to some closing thoughts. I think those are all key questions to answer, and I appreciate you guys giving our clients some perspective on that. So Jay, give me the first of what I know you have a couple closing thoughts relative to this.
Yeah, so just in a statement, election results have little impact on long-term investors. And we talk about all the time, what are your goals? Why are you investing? I have a feeling that whatever's going on in the election has little to do with why you are investing. So stick with the plan. That's why you started investing in the first place.
Excellent. Cody, first closing thought?
Yeah, that is, markets are usually volatile during the primary season. We didn't really see much of that this year, but this year was kind of a unique year until where we already had. We knew the two people that were running, although
we knew.
One was switched out. All right, and then guess what? We did have volatility in that time frame.
Correct.
Right. That was that's the first time we had volatility really this year. But the big thing is stay focused, stay invested, and don't make those knee-jerk reactions.
Excellent. Jay, final thought?
That's really it. The unknown and the uncertainty of all this makes investing difficult. Right. But by using a strategy and knowing that it's going to be, ups and downs, then you can just know that if there are, it's part of the plan. And so stick to the plan. Keep going.
Right. And I think an election year, general election year, is one more example of what can create fear and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It's on the list, right? But in fairness, you're telling me it's no different than all the other things that can create fear and uncertainty. Middle Eastern conflict, Eastern European conflict, somebody trying to assassinate somebody. Those all create a lot of fear and uncertainty, and it's very understandable. But at the end of the day, long-term investment strategy doesn't impact it.
Right. Because, you are investing that money for a reason. And like I said earlier, I doubt that the reason has changed because of the election. So
great point.
If you change something in your personal life and you need the money sooner or later, something that's different. But stay the course. Stick to the plan.
Excellent. Final thought?
Yeah, I think a couple key takeaways is with all the studies out there, it never makes sense to go to cash at any point in time. It always makes sense to stay invested because you're making two decisions, right? When to go to cash and when to get back in, and that's usually the hardest thing to do. And on top of that too, certainly it shows. I mentioned that, like the dollar cost averaging. Don't stop putting money into like your 401k because of the election. Keep it going. Take advantage of the volatile times because history shows that it comes back. So I think don't let the emotions get the better part of you.
Yeah. So the fear and uncertainty is a reason to make sure your dollar cost averaging.
Absolutely.
Because of the up and down. And like I said, it's different. It's not different than any other situation that creates fear and uncertainty. And it's like if I look back on the length of time that the two of you guys have been in this career and I've been in it, we've gone through a lot of situations that create fear and uncertainty, from dot-com bubbles to you name it, it's happened. Most recently to the Fed taking the interest rates on a vertical climb, which impacted both stock and bond markets. That was fear and uncertainty.
Yep.
But again, continue to dollar cost average because you're taking advantage of everything, and stay the course because it's a long-term strategy, not a brief 1 or 2 year window that's going to determine success. Mm-hmm. All right, gentlemen, excellent. I hope that provides all of our clients, their friends and family, some perspective on this. We like to joke. I will tell you, it's not a joking matter. Yes, there's some fear and uncertainty in terms of what's going on. But as I always like to say, if I got a choice between laughing or crying, it's going to be laughing 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. So, again, I referenced the American Funds piece. If you'd like to see that, please reach out to us. Pick up the phone and call the old-fashioned way. Shoot us a text on the My Rep Chat line. Shoot us an email. We're happy to share that with you or your friends or family, or call any of us. If, again, you still have some fear and uncertainty, you'd like to talk about it, that's why we're here. Again, we want to keep you on that long-term investment strategy kind of runway and not let short-term noise change kind of what we're trying to do. So thanks for joining us, MIZ, and we'll see you guys next month.